So we're going to brief on the Deregulation Act. This has been in now for 4 years. So guys, I really hope you know it. I hope you understand it, and I hope you comply with it, because if you don't, you're 4 years out of date and you should have been coming to these seminars a long time ago. So the Deregulation Act had lots of different things that it incorporated, but the major changes were in relation to Section 21 notices and restrictions and the ability of how you can use them. So prior to the Deregulation Act, we used to use two forms, Section 21 4A and Section 21 1B. There was two different Section 21 notices, one used during a fixed term and one used after a fixed term. As of the 1st of October 2015, they changed it to what's now called the Section 21 Form 6A. It's a prescribed form, so any Section 21 Form 6A that you're using, you must not amend. Prescribed means it needs to be kept as is. And what it also did was so Section 21 Form 6A, you can't serve notice for the first 4 months of the tenancy, the initial fixed term. The Section 21 notice has now got a 6-month shelf life from the date of service, not the date of expiry. So if you serve a Section 21 on the 1st of January to expire on the 1st of March, 2nd of March, whichever the date may be, you've only got 4 months after that date to then exercise that Section 21 through court. Prior to that, the longest known Section 21 that had been used was about 6 years. The notice had been served 6 years prior and was successful in court. Now it has an expiry date. You also have an obligation to serve documentation prior to the start of tenancy in order to use a Section 21 notice. And this is the list of stuff that you need to provide to the tenant and be able to prove that you've given it to the tenant. By saying that you've given it to them is not enough. You now need something along the lines of a move-in checklist to document and have the tenant sign that they were given all of this prior to tenancy. A copy of the gas safety certificate that is in date. I actually had a landlord that served a tenant a copy of the gas safety certificate prior to the start of tenancy, which had expired. You are now non-compliant. In the deregulation, you can never serve Section 21. You're also breaking the law in terms of gas regulations 1994. An EPC that is now at an E or above rating. The How to Rent Guide. Now, what I call this piece of documentation is how to shaft your landlord. Because we're talking about tenants not knowing what we know, or what I know, or what you know. But now, just before you move a tenant in, you have to give them a booklet that tells them everything that they need to know. It tells them that you have to allow them quiet enjoyment. It tells them that you are not allowed to go into their property without their permission. It tells them that you must register the deposit within 30 days of that payment being made. It tells them that you must also issue prescribed information. It tells them that you shouldn't charge them any tenant fees. It tells them every single thing that they need to know that are your obligations. This wasn't here before, so some tenants that were naive, young, whatever the reason, might not have known, but now they're given a booklet that tells them. So this is why it's so important that you don't do what the gentleman over there does and goes and throws people on bonfires, because I'm sure in the How to Rent Guide, the latest version, it says you can't do that. So all of this information needs to be provided to the tenant prior to the start date of tenancy. Also, a copy of the licence. So for HMOs, a copy of the licence must be given to the tenant prior to the start of tenancy. If the property is additional licensed, it needs to be given. And if it's selectively licensed, it needs to be given. Failure to give them all of this stuff will result in no Section 21 being able to be used throughout the duration of the tenancy. And there's two further requirements here. The deposit, this has been out now since 2007. You must register the deposit. It was initially 14 days, it's now 30 days. They've given you longer time, and you must serve the prescribed information, the terms of the scheme, the leaflet or certificate where applicable. All of those things need to be done. You can serve all of these documentations via email as long as you've got evidence that the tenant has accepted. And remember, if there's 4 tenants, all of them have to have this. All of them have to have this, so you get all of them to sign the documentation. One further thing to remember about the How to Rent Guide, this is more for agents because we do it every single day. we can't have them stored in our drawer and give them out, and this is for the new business side of things, and give them out because they are updated regularly. So I encourage all of our staff, and I encourage you, that whenever you are issuing a how to rent guide, you download it direct from the government website on that day, because they make changes and don't necessarily tell you. So whenever there's a new piece of legislation, they will update that guide. So tenant fee ban came in, they updated the guide. Any other bit of legislation, they'll update the guide. And you have to be able to show and document on your moving checklist what version you gave them. We as best practice also reserve all of these documents on renewal. There's nothing really that says that you have to. It's a bit grey. Better to be safe than sorry. Reissue the documents again.